Star Trek, Primitive Passenger Season 1, Episode 8, 5618 Friend. The havoc materialized in a flash of blinding light at the coordinates in the former Borg's message. The vast expanse of space shimmering around it like a mirage, settling into reality. Nolan Mercer, still adjusting to the pressure suit that had kept him conscious through the jump, thought about the emaciated hologram. That man wasn't long for this galaxy. He thought aloud. What was that? Ilara responded. Full sensor sweep, his voice tight with urgency. Let's see what we've got. He removed his helmet. The AI's response was immediate, her tone clinical yet tinged with curiosity. Scanning now, Nolan. I'm detecting a small planetoid approximately 200,000 kilometers off our port bow. Atmosphere is thin but breathable. Surface temperatures are within tolerable ranges for most humanoid life forms. Nolan hammered at the holographic controls, bringing up a detailed orbital view of the planetoid's surface. Any signs of our distressed friends? He stood and started disassembling the pressure suit, feeling a small panic in his chest due to its confines. Affirmative, Ilara replied. I'm picking up multiple life signs clustered in what appears to be the remains of a makeshift settlement. The readings are unusual, Nolan. There's significant electromagnetic interference. There's at least 600 people down there, she continued. A frown creased Nolan's brow. He studied the readouts. The life signs were erratic, fluctuating in ways that defied easy explanation. Unusual how, exactly? The biosignatures are inconsistent, Ilara explained, a note of perplexity in her voice. It's as if their bodies are in a constant state of flux, with electronic components augmenting biological systems. And there's more. They have technology that far exceeds the capabilities of the Lost that we salvaged. Nolan's mind methodically piecing together the fragments of information. The distress call, the desperate plea for help, and now these bizarre readings. It all pointed to a situation far more complex than a simple rescue mission. Nolan exhaled slowly, his mind processing the implications of Ilara's report. All right, let's try to make contact. Open a channel to the settlement. A burst of static filled the bridge, gradually resolving into a weak, distorted signal. Nolan leaned forward, his voice clear and measured. This is Nolan Mercer of the starship Havoc. We've received your distress call and are here to offer assistance. Do you copy? Moments passed before a response crackled through, the voice unmistakably female, but strained with exhaustion and desperation. This is Sarah at the settlement. Copy. Please, we need help. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a haggard woman. Her face, gaunt from malnutrition, bore the unmistakable signs of Borg technology. Pale skin crisscrossed with cybernetic implants. Most striking was her left arm, or rather the absence of it. Ragged flesh and exposed circuitry marked where the limb should have been. Nolan's expression softened, compassion tempering his usual wariness. Sarah, we're here to help. Can you tell me about your situation? Sarah's eyes, one organic and one a glowing cybernetic orb, darted nervously. We were Borg, severed from the collective when our ship was destroyed. Our implants are failing, and we're starving. The man who sent the message, Axum, he didn't make it. Nolan nodded gravely, his decision made. Understood, Sarah. We're preparing emergency rations now. I'll be transporting down shortly with supplies. You've got about 600 souls down there. Turning to Ilara, Nolan's voice took on a tone of quiet determination. Ilara, start replicating basic nutrient packs and water. Nothing too complex. We don't want to overwhelm their systems. No problem. I can have them ready to beam down shortly, Ilara confirmed. Nolan, I must advise caution. We don't know the full extent of their condition or if there are any lingering Borg protocols. Nolan managed a wry smile as he checked his blaster. Noted. But sometimes, Ilara, you've got to take a leap of faith. He paused, his expression growing serious. "Keep the Havoc ready to rock if I get assimilated. Nuke the site from orbit and go find someone worthy of your affections, okay?" As the replicators hummed to life, producing stacks of nutrient packs and water containers, Nolan prepared for transport. He knew he was walking into an unprecedented situation, one that could easily turn dangerous. But the thought of Sarah's desperate face and of hundreds suffering below steeled his resolve. "All right," Nolan said. "Let's go meet our new friends." He tapped his comm badge, and in a shimmer of light, Nolan Mercer vanished from the Havoc, ready to face whatever awaited him on the surface of this troubled world. The harsh, alien landscape materialized around Nolan as the transporter beam released him. Craggy rocks and sparse, twisted vegetation dotted the barren terrain. The makeshift settlement sprawled before him, a hodgepodge of salvaged materials and improvised shelters. Stacks of nutrient packs and water containers shimmered into existence at various points around the settlement. As Nolan's eyes adjusted to the dim light, figures began to emerge from the ramshackle structures. Their movements were halting, pained, a far cry from the efficient, purposeful stride one might expect from active Borg drones. These were broken beings, clinging to the edge of survival. Sira approached, her cybernetic eye glowing faintly in the gloom. Up close, the toll of their ordeal was even more apparent. Her organic eye sunken, skin stretched taut over sharp cheekbones. "You came," she said, her voice a hoarse whisper. We didn't think anyone would." Nolan nodded, gesturing to the supplies. "It's not much, but it's a start. Let's get your people fed." As the former drones cautiously gathered around the supply caches, Nolan turned to Sira. "What happened here? How did you end up on this rock?" Sira's gaze grew distant, her brow furrowing with the effort of recollection. "It's fragmented. We were on a Borg, on a sphere, then chaos. Explosions. We were beamed away. Emergency escape. Then darkness. We woke up here, severed from the collective." A man stumbled past, his legs a patchwork of flesh and metal. "The nightmares," he muttered, eyes wild. "They won't stop. The screaming, the pain." Nolan looked to Sarah for explanation. She sighed, a sound heavy with exhaustion and sorrow. "Some remember their past lives, before assimilation. Others, nothing at all. But the nightmares, they haunt us all. Being assimilated, assimilating others. Our bodies reject the implants, but removing them could kill us." She raised her hand to her face, not recognizing what she found. "We have no surgical capabilities here anyway." Her voice, a mournful tone. As they spoke, Nolan observed the gathered crowd. Some tore into the nutrient packs with desperate hunger, while others seemed too weak to manage even that. Many bore visible signs of their bodies' war against the Borg technology. Inflamed flesh around metal protrusions, pus and rot oozing around cybernetic components. "How long have you been here?" Nolan asked, his voice low. Sarah shook her head. "Time blurs. Months, perhaps. Many didn't survive the first days. Without the ability to regenerate, without proper sustenance." She seemed fixated for a moment on some far-off thing. "There were over 2,000 of us." Seemed to leak from her lips like she forgot and was in her mouth. Her voice trailed off as a commotion erupted nearby. A young woman had collapsed, her body convulsing as an implant in her neck sparked and sputtered. Nolan rushed forward, but Sarah stopped him. "There's nothing you can do," she said, her tone resigned. "Her body is rejecting the implants without proper medical intervention." The implications hung heavy in the air. Nolan's mind raced, weighing options, calculating risks. These people needed more than just food and water. They needed advanced medical care, resources he wasn't sure he could provide. He tapped his comm badge. "Ilara, I need you to start compiling all available data on Borg physiology and implant removal procedures. We're going to need to set up some kind of medical facility down here." As Ilara acknowledged the order, Nolan turned back to Sira. The enormity of the task ahead was daunting, but the alternative, Leaving these people to suffer and die was unthinkable. "All right," he said, his voice filled with grim determination. "Let's get everyone stable, then we'll figure out our next move. This isn't going to be easy, but I promise you, Sarah, you're not alone anymore." As the makeshift colony stirred with renewed hope, Nolan found himself immersed in a grim routine of triage and improvised medical procedures. The cargo containers he'd landed served as rudimentary clinics, filled with the constant hum of Alara's precise transporter beams and the acrid smell of cauterized flesh. Nolan moved from patient to patient, his hands steady as he sealed wounds left by removed implants. The sight of raw, puckered flesh slowly knitting together under his ministrations became a small victory in a sea of challenges. Yet for every life saved, another slipped away, their bodies too damaged or dependent on the Borg technology to survive its removal. As dawn broke on the 5th day, Nolan stood at the entrance of the main shelter, surveying the changed landscape. The air hung heavy with a mixture of hope and sorrow. Fewer bodies lay motionless on the ground, but the cost of survival was etched on every face. Sarah approached, her gait steadier than before, though the absence of her left arm remained a stark reminder of their ongoing struggle. "We're ready," she said, her voice carrying a strength that hadn't been there days ago. "Those who can travel have been gathered." Nolan nodded, tapping his comm badge. "Ilara, status report on our new home?" "The planet remains ideal for colonization, Nolan," Ilara responded. "I've designated a landing zone far from the indigenous population. The area is rich in resources and should support the colony's immediate needs." "Good," Nolan replied. "And the native population?" "Primitive humanoids, as mentioned before. They appear to be in a pre-industrial stage of development, concentrated on a separate continent. The risk of accidental contact is minimal." Nolan turned to Sarah, his expression grave. "You understand that once we relocate, there's no going back. This planet will be your home, your people's chance to start anew." Sarah's organic eye shimmered with unshed tears, but her voice remained steady. "We understand. The collective took our past from us. Now we have a chance at a future. We're ready." With a nod, Nolan began the process of evacuation. The Havoc's transporters hummed to life, beaming groups of survivors directly to the prepared landing zone on the new planet. Those too weak to stand were carefully moved on makeshift stretchers, their bodies shimmering out of existence under the alien sky that had been both refuge and prison. As the last group prepared for transport, Nolan took a final look around the abandoned settlement. Remnants of their ordeal lay scattered. Discarded implants, makeshift tools, and mounds of freshly turned earth marking hasty graves. It was a grim testament to the resilience of these former drones, their struggle to reclaim some sort of normalcy in the face of unimaginable odds. "Ilara," Nolan said softly, "initiate final transport." Now, nearly alone on the desolate planet, around him the remains of the grotesque village stretched in every direction, littered with debris and the last half-dozen former Borg 2 damaged, too broken to survive the transporter. Their bodies lay in the nearest container. Nolan exhaled, his breath misting in the cold evening air, and sent a command to Ilara. She piloted the Maldor remotely, the ship descending from the heavens like a brick falling from the sky. Nolan would take these survivors, most in their final pitiful days, to their new home by his own hand. They may not get to live on the lush green planet Ilara had found, but they would get to see something better than this hell before their eyes closed. He walked toward the large container unit where they were gathered. The survivors, barely clinging to life, stared blankly from within the container. Among them, a young man caught Nolan's eye, missing everything below his rib cage, one arm torn away, and part of his skull missing, the remains of a harshly extracted implant still glistening under the meager light. The young man's gaze met Nolan's, and he smiled weakly, the smile unnerving on his otherwise youthful and perfect face. "Your species 5618, he spouted, his voice high and young. "Your species 5618, he repeated, Louder this time, as if summoning all the strength he had left. Nolan knelt beside him, rattled by the contrast of the man's broken body and disturbingly normal young face. "I'm Nolan Mercer," he said gently, leaning closer. "Do you remember your name?" The young man's remaining arm twitched, struggling to lift. Nolan caught him, cradling the Hathman in his arms, startled by how light he felt. The man's single arm looped weakly around Nolan's neck, desperate to hold on. I was, the Node Keeper. 19, the man huffed, his breaths coming in short bursts. Node Keeper 19, my mind. We manage the sphere's data module. His face contorted into a grim smile. Your species, 5618. I know you. There was a flicker of satisfaction in his voice, a glint in his eyes, as though recognizing Nolan somehow completed something deep within him. Nolan swallowed hard, forcing down the rising knot in his throat. He carried the Node Keeper carefully, feeling the frailty of the man's form against his own as he made his way back to the mall door. The hatch opened with a hiss, and Nolan placed him gently inside, alongside another dying drone he had carried moments earlier. He sat down next to the man, his brow furrowed. "What does it mean?" Nolan asked, glancing at the Node Keeper. "What does it mean? I'm species 5618. The Node Keeper's breathing was labored, but his voice retained that eerie, broken calm. "Tens of thousands, species catalogued and assimilated," he whispered, eyes glazing over as if he was reciting a mantra burned into his mind. "You are 5618. Nolan felt a chill run through him, a creeping dread curling in his gut. He crouched beside the Node Keeper again, his voice barely above a whisper. "So, the Borg have assimilated my kind before. Humans." The Node Keeper's hollow eyes drifted toward him, his lips twitching as though struggling to form words. "Yes, species 5618, assimilated long ago." Nolan's stomach twisted at the confirmation. The thought of Earth, his home, being overtaken by the cold, calculating grip of the Borg and entire civilization, stripped of identity, of life, was almost too much to bear. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to stand upright, his mind swirling with questions he wasn't sure he wanted answers to. Nolan's mind reeled at the implications as he gently secured the last of the critically injured drones in the Maldor. The thought of Earth facing such a threat was a heavy question pressing upon his mind. "Tell me more," Nolan urged as he settled into the pilot's seat, initiating the launch sequence. "I don't have dates anymore. They've all gone away. You are species 5618. The young man said with a smile, his eyes staring off into eternity. As the Maldor lifted off, leaving behind the desolate planetoid and its grim reminders, Nolan pressed for more information. When did this happen? How many were taken? As he plugged in the blink coordinates. But the young man just stared, a slight permanent smile on his face. He wouldn't see his lush green new home, but at least he would be buried there. The ship shuddered as Nolan engaged the blink drive. In a flash of light, they traversed the distance to the new home planet. As they descended through the atmosphere, the lush landscape was a stark contrast to the barren world they'd left behind. "We're here," Nolan announced softly, more to himself than his passengers. "A new beginning." The Maldor touched down in a clearing near the main settlement. As Nolan began the process of carefully moving his fragile passengers, he saw Sarah approaching, her face a mixture of relief and concern. A snarl. Nolan found himself standing on the lush surface of the new world. The air was warm and thick with the scent of vegetation, a stark contrast to the barren rock they'd left behind. Around him, the survivors of the Borg ordeal took in their new surroundings with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Sarah stood at his side, her gaze fixed on the horizon where twin suns were rising, bathing the landscape in a golden glow. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Nolan nodded, allowing himself a moment to appreciate the view before turning his attention to the tasks ahead. "It is, but we've got work to do. Let's get everyone settled, and then we'll start planning for the long term." As the group began to move toward the prefabricated shelters Alara had beamed down, Nolan couldn't shake the weight of what he'd learned. The Borg threat to Earth, the implications of humanity, assimilated and racked with the anguish of these people. It all swirled in his mind, adding new layers of complexity to his already convoluted journey. Nolan sat with Sarah and two other former Borg, their faces etched with a mixture of sorrow and curiosity. The setting suns cast long shadows across the fledgling settlement, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of alien flora. "I buried the young node keeper on the next hill over," Nolan said softly. "It's marked with a large white stone." He paused, his eyes scanning the faces before him. "Can any of you explain his species 5618 references?" One of the extrones, a tall, gaunt man with cybernetic implants still visible along his jawline, spoke up. "The collective categorizes all encountered species numerically," he explained, his voice a rasp. "It's a way of efficiently cataloging biological and technological distinctiveness." Sierra nodded, adding, "If the Node Keeper recognized you, then species 5618 refers to your kind, humans." Nolan leaned forward, his interest piqued. "How do I learn where to find more of my people? Are there records, databases?" The third Borg, a woman with a cybernetic eye, shook her head. "Such information would have been stored in our sphere's data module, but our vessel was destroyed." "The final wreckage," Sierra interjected, her organic eye distant with recollection. "It was left behind in a nebula. If it still exists, you might find what you're looking for there. Along with thousands of dead drones, I'm afraid." Nolan's pulse quickened. "Do you remember the coordinates?" The tall man closed his eyes, accessing fragmented memories. After a moment, he recited a long string of numbers and spatial markers. "These should lead you to the nebula," he said. "But we can't be certain. The wreckage remains. It's been some time." Nolan committed the coordinates to memory, hope and apprehension warring within him. "Thank you," he said earnestly. "This could be the key to finding my way home." Sarah reached out, her remaining hand grasping Nolan's arm. "Be cautious, Nolan. The Borg may be gone from that place, but their technology is dangerous, unpredictable." Nolan nodded, his expression grave. "I understand, but this is a lead I have to follow." He looked around at the burgeoning colony, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You've all come so far in just a few days. I think you'll be all right without me." As the ex-Borg nodded their agreement, Nolan's mind was already planning. The nebula, the sphere's wreckage, the possibility of finding a way back to Earth. It all beckoned to him, a siren song of hope and danger in equal measure. Had Earth been taken by the Borg? Was he fighting all these years to get back to an Earth that was a dead rock in space? The future, as always, remained uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Nolan Mercer felt the pull of a clear purpose. Whatever awaited him in that distant nebula, he needed to know. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the fledgling colony, Nolan made his final preparations. He stood before a small gathering of ex-Borg, including Sarah, near the shuttle he was leaving behind. "This shuttle should serve you well," Nolan explained, patting the sleek vessel's hull. "It's designed for atmospheric flight, so you can explore the planet more efficiently. Just remember to keep an eye on the fuel cells." Sarah nodded, her eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and concern. "Thank you, Nolan. This will be invaluable for our survival." Nolan's expression grew serious as he addressed the group. "One more thing about the indigenous population on the southern continent. I suggest you leave them be, at least for now. Non-interference might be the best policy until you're more established." The ex-Borg exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between them. They, more than most, understood the importance of allowing a civilization to develop on its own terms. "We agree," Sierra said, speaking for the group. "We've had enough of forcing our presence on others." Satisfied, Nolan began his goodbyes. He shook hands, accepted awkward hugs, and offered words of encouragement to those who had, in such a short time, become something akin to friends. As he walked towards the mall door, Sierra fell into step beside him. "Be careful out there, Nolan," she said softly. "And thank you for everything." Nolan offered a small smile. "You're welcome. Take care of each other." He stopped for a moment. "Listen, I don't feel right about it, but I won't be back. Once I'm gone, once you're gone, you're gone," Sierra said melodically. "We'll be all right here, Nolan. At worst, we pass in sunshine and blue skies and with full bellies. Everyone here is just relieved to get away from that graveyard." With a final wave, Nolan entered the Maldor. The engines hummed to life, and the small ship lifted off, quickly becoming a speck in the darkening sky. Once clear of the atmosphere, Nolan initiated the blink drive. In a flash of light, the lush planet vanished, replaced by the familiar interior of the Havoc's massive hold. As the Maldor settled into its docking cradle, Nolan let out a long breath. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of emotions and revelations, but now a new challenge lay ahead. The nebula, the wrecked sphere, and the tantalizing possibility of finding his way back to Earth. "Welcome back, Nolan." Alara's voice greeted him as he stepped onto the Havoc's bridge. "Shall I set a course for the coordinates provided by the ex-Borg?" Nolan settled into the captain's chair, his eyes fixed on the star field visible through the viewscreen. "Do it," he replied, his voice filled with determination. "Let's see if we can find a broken Borg sphere." It sounded more absurd when he said it out loud. As the Havoc's engines powered up, preparing for the jump, Nolan couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and trepidation. Whatever lay ahead, he knew it would bring him one step closer to unraveling the mystery of his long journey through time and space. The stars stretched into streaks of light as the Havoc engaged its blink drive, carrying Nolan Mercer toward his next adventure, and perhaps, finally, towards home. Epilogue. Mercer, dirt on his clothes, a makeshift wooden shovel. He sits beside the large white stone he'd placed to mark the keeper's grave. He surveyed the valley below him from the high hillside. "I was going to be married," the young keeper said. He adjusted his seated position upon the white rock. "Her name was Janelle, and she wore the most beautiful gown." He leaned forward, tying an errant shoelace. The keeper, alive, vibrant, and full of life, his youthful face smiling in the bright sun as he surveyed the valley with Mercer. "I bet that was a sight. I still remember my wedding day, my Hiromi Rai." Mercer's view of the valley blurring as tears welled in his eyes. "Her matriarch was already pressuring us to start having children, and we'd only just met." He chuckled. "I took over my uncle's position as family chancellor. Gentle and I were preparing to say our vows." "You all lost so much." Nolan stood, now equal height as the young man seated on the stone beside him. "They took everything from you." Nolan's sadness, the darkness that always surrounded him, bearing down like nightfall. "This is home now," the keeper said, with a smile for Mercer. "You'll find yours too, friend." As Mercer turned to the young man, he was now the sad husk of a Borg drone, his body torn apart and his one arm reaching for Mercer. "You are species 56-8, friend." Wait. What about Earth? Did they survive? Mercer's eyes wild as the terror of an assimilated Earth tore through him. The young man just stared, a slight permanent smile on his face. With a violent jolt, Nolan's eyes snapped open. He found himself bolt upright in the command chair on the Havoc's bridge, his chest heaving as he gulped in air. Disoriented, he blinked rapidly, tears hitting the deck plating.